Hey you folks, Quilly18 here, and welcome to another video in our Unity base building game series, codenamed Project Porcupine. And the last time we started implementing our LUA interpreter built into our game here, so that we can move all the furniture logic out to a file that's more easily moddable and more manageable. And we left things off with basically a script that runs every single frame correctly. This is the LUA script. This gets correctly called every single frame. Right now, it simply returns a string called foo, and in our execution code, we just print out whatever this returns. Obviously, this is not currently doing anything game-wise, so let's get our onUpdate gas generator to start generating gas once again. So if we take a look over here, we can confirm that I want to go all the way to the top here, our furniture, our tile, and our room class are both flagged as Moonsharp user data, which means we can interact with it in our Lua file. And what we really want to do is we have this code in the Lua file that is, this is commented out, but this was our old C# code and its behavior over there. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to re-implement this in Lua over here. But what we're going to do to start off with is we're just going to start with this part over here. This is the bit that actually changes the amount of gas in the room. So we're going to go and just copy this and bring it down to here. So I've got no semicolon over here. What else do I have to do to change it in Lua? Because in Lua, you don't have a semicolon at the end of the line. Well, first of all, because I decided, I don't know, apparently make my life slightly more complicated, I have our furniture variable here is called furniture as opposed to fern. So we're just going to go and update that. So furniture.tile.room. This should all work because these are all classes that are exposed to Lua. And we're going to call room.changeGas. We're going to say we're going to change the amount of O2 in here, which currently is a hard-coded value, but we can see if we can adjust that later. And how much we change it by? Well, we change it by 0.01, so 1% per second, which means, so we have to multiply by delta time. We don't need the F here. The F there is normally to specify that the number is a floating point number, because in Unity, we typically work with floats, and in C#, if you don't put F, it will use a double precision float, which is not generally needed for what we do, and also because of the type mismatch, sometimes you'll end up with a bunch of complaints from Unity when it tries to complain. But here in Lua, that wouldn't, we don't need that. We can just do this, and that'll work out fine. It'll handle the conversions between unit types perfectly okay. So this line here, which is very similar to what we had here in C#, should work. So what I've gone ahead and done is we can hit play here and load. We've got a nice enclosed room over here. It's very important. Obviously, our gas generator doesn't do anything if the room is not enclosed because all the gas vents out the space. So we currently have this room being room index number 1. And if we click build oxygen, well, generator over here, but it's being clipped, and we just put it down somewhere, in our tooltip, we can see that indeed oxygen is being generated right now in the room. We are still spitting out the foo debug information here, which I guess is fine. And yeah, our code is working. Now, it's not doing everything it was doing before. It used to stop when the atmospheric pressure of O2 reached 0.2. And now it's just going to keep going on, so we can re-implement a little bit of this logic in here. I guess we'll go ahead and do that, and basically check all of these things. Now, I don't think, unless we expose debug.lockError, I don't think we can call that from inside the Lua generator. So we'll probably want to do something like that. In fact, what we're going to want to do at some point is have some sort of function, you know, like debug log, some sort of function like this, that people can put in their Lua code that will give information to the user, probably give us some sort of dialog box with that kind of debug information, so that when people go and write their own Lua code, they're going to have some way to report errors to the end user, because obviously the typical user doesn't have access to this console log anyway. So we're going to want some sort of ability to throw a pop-up error at some point. Right now we don't, and so that's okay. So we'll just go beyond that, or we'll just ignore that. But we can do some other checks here. So for example, we can check if we can check to make sure that this room is not null. So if this is equal to nil, then we'll just return and exit out early. We don't have to return anything. Oh, but we could. I suppose we could still return a message here. And maybe that's what we can use as like an easy debug message for now. We can say something like, furniture's room was null. We can put in that little check. And we can also put in a check that the gas is sufficient, or it's not over a certain limit. So, again, if furniture, oh, we need to make sure it's furniture, not fern, because again, I like to make my life difficult. If the amount of gas of O2 in the room is less than 0.2 atmospheric pressure, that's when we add in the gas. And we can put in an end. And again, hell, I can put in these notes here like else. Do we go into a standby mode to save power? Question mark. And then we can put in a return here like success. You know, something like this. And then we'll still see that information in debug log. Although right now it's still going to be kind of spammy because it runs every single frame, and we're probably not going to want anything like that. But let's go ahead and hit play. And I've got a syntax error. So the LUA did not parse properly here. Near return. Do I have my... Is it the parentheses, or am I not checking for null? Oh, I need a then. If then. Try this. I'm not a LUA programmer. Okay, there we go. Now, there might still be some other error when we get this in here, but at least it parsed correctly. Ah, there we go. And it is still working. Excellent. And what should happen here is when it hits 0.2 atmospheric pressure, it should stop generating O2, because the other thing will not run. And yeah, we'll probably want things to be a little bit less spammy over here. Especially like on a success, we don't really have to return something. There we go. 20% is fine. So if we just don't return anything over here, so I mean, we don't even need the return statement, but for the sake of argument, if I do this and load and drop down the O2, okay, we are still debugging out the null. So let's go ahead and see here. Because we just return result.string. Well, we don't need to do that if it's null. So we'll do something like if result.type equals data type dot string. So only if we return a string from this do we output it to the debug log. That way, if we return null, if we return nothing, then it doesn't get outputted. We may want to do something if we return a number, but again, these scripts here that run, we're not doing anything with the return statement at all. So really the only thing that will ever return from an update statement might be a string that we want to debug out to somewhere. And again, later on, we probably want to have some sort of function that is, you know, debug window.show with some sort of text or something of that nature. We'll figure that out later on. But I did want to address one thing that people pointed out in the comments that was very helpful. Over here, this function of call takes in, for the second parameter here, oh, I lost the context, little tooltip. For the second parameter here, the arguments is a params type, and that people pointed out, of course, that you don't actually have to build your own array here. You can just pass any number of variables here. So, you know, oops, not a dot. Foo, stupid autocomplete, bar, baz. I mean, you can keep adding more variables here, and they will correctly get passed the function because of how the params keyword works in the attributes. So I don't need to set up a little dummy array here. Fern and delta time will be correctly passed to the other function if I do this, and we can confirm that by hitting play and loading and build the oxygen generator over there. And it is definitely running because you can see the oxygen going over there. So that's just a little bit of a cleaner way to call it. I think the end result is exactly the same. Whether or not we create our own array or not, I think the end result is identical, but this sure as hell looks a heck of a lot better and less cumbersome. Okay, so I guess we're going to go and add in more scripts at this point. Just implement more of the behavior that we had before. So we can reference those in the furniture action class over here. We have a bunch of stuff that is commented out. It might be nice, for example, to get our doors working again, because right now they don't, in that our character is able to just walk freely through a door. So if I say, hey, build a wall over here, our character will just walk directly through the door now. And so we would like to put that back. Now, the door behavior is slightly different from the oxygen generator because it does have an update action. So in that context, it's going to be quite similar. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. I can remove the old C# code in here that we were just using as a reference. So we've got that. The other thing we'll be able to do later on is we could very easily have multiple Lua files, right? This, for example, could just be the O2 Lua file as opposed to all furniture, and we may want to do that, but for now it's okay. I'm going to get rid of this this extra little dummy stuff up top here to clean up the file. This return is also not really needed, but we might pay attention to that at some point, so I'll leave it in because it's okay. So we're going to start a new function, and I guess we'll just call it door update, or yeah, I like on update door. I think I like this structure a little bit better. And then we want furniture and delta time. That is still going to get passed. So end. Okay. And again, I'm going to do the same thing where I grab the existing code here, and I'm just going to paste it in here as a reference as we start typing along. And it'd be nice if there was a way to quickly comment this out, like you can do in MonoDevelop, but I can't. So there must be a multi-line comment. Hold on, multi-line comment. I bet you there's something. I just don't know the syntax, and there is. Excellent. So apparently, if you do dash dash bracket bracket, and down here we can go dash dash close brackets. Very nice. Okay, that's a heck of a lot easier. All right, so we're going to re-implement this. A lot of it is going to be pretty similar. Again, my furn.furniture is a little bit annoying because of the copy-paste not working anymore, exactly like I'd like, but that's what I get for being inconsistent. Furniture.getParameter is opening is greater than 1, so if the door is opening, then we do something. We go furniture.changeParameter of openness. We can grab this stuff directly. We're going to open at a certain rate. And again, let's put in a little fix me. Maybe we want a parameter for the door opening speed. Then we'll do another if check over here. Actually, let me grab this as is. I think that's going to be okay. So we can bring this back down this way. If furniture this, then we do that, and then we end that if over here. All right, and then we've got our else, and we can end that part of it. I love how Sublime Text does correctly interpret Lua, which is great. So it does, the tabs and indents and everything properly. So otherwise, we are closing doors. So if we're not opening, then we are closing. So we do that. Wonderful. Then we want to update the openness amount. Oops. Or we want to clamp the openness amount, which is interesting because do we have access to this mathf clamp library? And the answer is no. Does Lua have a built-in clamp function? It might. I'm not seeing a strong reference to it being built in. Looks like probably no. So we can we could write our own inline, or we could actually define a clamp function, which probably means we'll want some sort of library later on. I'm going to go ahead and just really quickly make the clamp here. I'll probably find out that there's a proper built-in clamp at some point, but for now, we're going to do clamp, actually, yeah, clamp 01, which is a nice shortcut for keeping things between 0 and 1. In the C# library, clamp 01 just forces the value to be between 0 and 1. So we'll accept some sort of value over here, and we'll say if value is greater than 1, then we return 1. Oops. Then, I'm not used to writing these thens. Apparently I'm not used to writing anything. If value is greater than 1, then return 1, else, is it else if? Well, I guess we'll find out. If the value is less than 0, then return 0. Otherwise, we return the value itself. Else if. Did I get that right? I did get that right. I'm always amazed when I remember syntax in another language. All right, good. And I don't need the parentheses here, but I don't know. I think it's a good force of habit. But I think I would like the space here because of the then statement. Just like developing my own personal idiosyncrasies for formatting here. All right, so we've got a clamp 01 function here, so I can remove the reference to mathf and still use the rest of it. But that should work. Clamp 01, so we're going to get the parameter of openness. We're going to make sure it's between 0 and 1, and then we're going to set that parameter in there, which we could probably... Yeah, all right, that's good. I'm happy with that. What else we got here? And then, oh, if there's a onChanged callback, we need to call that. Ooh. Does that work from inside of Lua? So this is our action, which actually could be multiple actions that are referenced in here. I don't know. So first, we do have to check that it's not nil. Then we try to call it. I'm not convinced that this will work. Because I don't know. I mean, maybe it will. Maybe it won't. And if it doesn't, that's okay. We can easily fix that by having another helper function. But let's get rid of these semicolons over here. All right, that's looking okay. So let's hit play. At parsed, load the map. And we can... Well, that update is running every single frame. This is running every single frame. And hasn't thrown an error, so some of these things are working. But right now, or is it? No, it's not running. It is not running because our XML file doesn't have a reference to it. Right? If we look at our oxygen generator, which is over here, we say that we've got an onUpdate function. So we need to do the same sort of thing for the door. OnUpdate door. So that'll tell us a little bit about syntax errors. But the door still doesn't have the isEnterable reference, so the isOpening will never get set to 1. But this will at least ensure that the code is running every frame, and we'll find out what happens there. All right. Now, one of the interesting things with this is, are we going to get like error information that is helpful for us? And I'm not sure that we are. Cannot cast from source type to destination type. But I don't see a specific line reference that is throwing this error, which is really unfortunate. But it would not surprise me if it was over here. There's probably a better way to interpret this, but let's see. I'm just going to comment out that bit and then run it again. Hit play. Hit load. Is it the clamp call? Because everything else should be fine. No. That's weird. Let me make this function do nothing for a moment here. It's going to do absolutely nothing. I want to make sure it's nothing weird with the clamp. All right, now we're back to being fine. Okay. So what are you complaining about in here? We get parameters, we change parameters. They're just numbers being multiplied. Well, let's do this one little bit at a time and see what goes on. Invalid cast cannot cast from source type. What's going on here? That wasn't going on there. Furniture, furniture. There's something going on different with the door. Furniture got get parameter. I guess, oh, we're not actually, we don't call get parameter over here, whereas we do over here. Because we're calling a function get gas amount. But why is get parameter a problem? Is it returning a null value? So what I could do is provide a default, because get parameter supports a default value if it's not in the list. And maybe that's it. Maybe we're comparing something weird. No, it should always default to 0, though. Oh. Oh. Really? Really? So this provides an error. But this one does not. Is it because there's a default? Hold on, we got to look at what the... Oh, I actually have to hit load again to confirm that it's working. Okay, let's take a look at the get parameter function here. So there's only one variant of it. But I guess the Lua code doesn't understand this default value getting passed to a parameter in a function call. So it's trying to call, when I'm doing this, it's trying to call a function called getParameter that takes one and exactly one parameter. And it chokes on that. So in Lua, we always have to pass that. Alternatively, let's see if it's aware of multiple functions with the same name instead. Instead of having a default value here, let's make another version like this, which will require us to remove the default value here, otherwise there will be confusion. So now we actually have a variant of getParameter that just takes one parameter. And what it's going to do is it's just going to call the other version. So it's just going to return the other version by passing a 0 over there. So let's see if that works, if the Lua is cool and comfortable with two functions with the same name. Now, it's not a big deal one way or another. We can easily work around it, but it's interesting to figure out here. Load, and okay, that it's happy about. So now we're back to hunky-dory code, because in the Lua, it's looking for a function called getParameter that takes exactly one property, and there is one. So, presumably, let me leave this bit off. Well, actually, we'll go there. We'll leave the extra bit off for now. Let's go and hit play and load. There we go. Excellent. So this is running every single frame now. It's still not doing anything because the is opening still doesn't get triggered. Let me go and do this just to see if there's any sort of weird syntaxy complaints about that. Still don't know if the functions will get called properly there. But so far, so good. Okay. Actually, this really should get called every single frame. CB on changed for the furniture because the door icon gets updated. I think this is actually working. What I can do, I can test this by forcing the door to be opening. If I do this, then what should happen when I start is the door should instantly start to open. And they do, and they get updated properly. Holy crap! I'm shocked. I did not realize that our little callback system here would work fine in Lua. I thought I would have to add a function in the furniture class called something like call on change callbacks or something like that. But that is really wonderful to see. Hopefully this also works with if this were basically an array of update functions, but I think it probably all works. Okay, so we can get rid of this little testing. That's great. So the next thing for us to do will be to implement the is enterable bit of code, right? So we have this sort of reference here, right? Is enterable. Because the way it works is to review with the pathfinding when the door's movement rate is listed as being 1. Perfectly normal. You can enter a tile with a door and it's not any slower to walk through or anything like that. We have that code implemented in there. And that is indeed true. Our character is more than happy to walk through this. It assumes the door is not an obstacle. But the way we have it in code is whenever a character is wants to enter a tile, irrespective of its actual pathfinding and the movement cost, whenever a character wants to enter a tile, it tries to call an isEnterable function on any furniture in that tile. And the isEnterable function can respond one of 3 different ways. Yeah, it's perfectly enterable. Go ahead, go nuts. It's okay. Or 2, it says, no, you can't enter me at all. You know, something went wrong, repathfind or whatever. Or the third option is, it says, wait, I'm not telling you can't enter my tile, but you can't enter it right now. And what happens in the door logic, or it used to happen in the door logic, and we can verify that in the old furniture actions right over here. The old thing is when a door gets asked if it's enterable, it sets that, hey, someone wants to enter my tile. So it sets is opening to be 1. So it sets it to 1, which means true in this case. And then it returns whether you can enter now or whether you can enter soon, depending on whether the door is actually open or not. And then in the onUpdate function, it does this. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to, in our XML file, we're going to have to accept some sort of function name here. It's going to be very, very similar to this. So something like, actually, I kind of like that. I think is enterable, and then we give it a function name, which is probably just something like is enterable underscore door. I think we can do this. All right, good. Let's go ahead and throw that down. So we need a function called is enterable door. Oh, and we can get rid of this old reference code over here. So, is enterable underscore door. Doesn't need a delta time, just needs the furniture so it knows what to reference, and that's going to be okay. And we can, once again, basically grab this old code as a reference, like that. And so we're going to say, okay, so someone wants to enter this tile. Great. There we go. Okay, just getting confused about indentations here. Someone wants to enter this, so we are going to, once again, set is opening to 1. Then we are going to check. Actually, I can really just update the existing code. There we go. I don't need to be a little funky here. Let me pull that back. There we go. Then I can check to see if the furniture's get parameter of openness is equal to or greater than 1. So this means the door is open. Then we can return enterability yes. Otherwise, we return enterability soon. Now, is enterability dot whatever as a data type something we can reference here? Let's find out. So if we hit play, it'll try to parse that, and it'll let us know if we've got any syntax errors, and we don't. So this might be okay. But we're not actually running this yet, because when we read our XML, we aren't paying attention to that isEnterable bit. So in our furniture class, we've got our read XML prototype over here. And we read in on update, but right now we're not doing anything if we see isEnterable, right? This tag here isEnterable, we're not doing anything with it. So we just have to make sure we are going to do something with it. And we are going to get the function name. Do I just want to set? Well, you know what? I don't even need to store this. I can just do something like that. But we don't want to register an update action. Go to declaration. Instead, what we want to do is register an isEnterable action. I guess I could just write that directly, couldn't I? That's probably okay. Because it's... Oh, right, because we have isEnterable is a func right now. So just like we did for the update actions, we need to change this to a list of strings called isEnterable actions, like that. And I guess I will duplicate this. isEnterable. We're going to add or remove strings. We've got a string there, so register isEnterable action or unregister it. And we need to make sure this gets copied properly. Furniture, the clone one. Yeah, so here we copy it before, but we want to isEnterable actions. Copy that list over there. Great, and we have to make sure once again in our read XML prototype that we are registering register isEnterable action with that name. Okay, so now we pay attention to the isEnterable tag. We grab the string that is the isEnterable function name and register that over here. We will, somewhere that function used to get called, we have to just see here. There we go. Where was it? Right over here. So this is what happens when we try to enter a tile. The character calls isEnterable on a tile, which then checks to see if it's got any furniture, and then tries to call those functions. So this is not a function we can call directly anymore. It's a set of strings. So what do we want to do with it here? I think it's good that it's protected. I think that's perfectly fine. So I guess we're going to want what? So there needs to be two things. We still need to check to see if the furniture's got a custom isEnterable. And return that. Well, no, I guess it's fine. We could have a default behavior. So something, so we can have our own, all right, in furniture over here, we can have our own version of this. Public enterability isEnterable. And then we can say something like if isEnterable actions is equal to null, or, which actually it can be, we never actually instantiate that list, so we'll have to check, or it's empty. Is there an empty? No. So dot count equals 0. So if we don't actually have any of these functions, then we just return enterability is equal to yes. We just assume that you can enter this tile. And that's okay because, and you're going to say, well, what if this piece of furniture is a wall? Well, if the piece of furniture is a wall, then it's actually this movement cost function which checks to see the movement cost of the furniture will return never. So a wall sets the movement cost of a tile to 0, which means it's not enterable. So that's going to be okay. Otherwise, we have to call functions with the furniture based on is enterable, but we don't have a delta time to pass. And yeah, I have to make sure that our list gets instantiated here. Same thing as update actions. There we go. Okay, I think we should be okay. Is enterable. Yeah, so we don't have a version of this that doesn't have a delta time. Now, I could differentiate it with different names. What if we take a slice out of, the LUA's call and also do a params thing here? So we could call this with an arbitrary number of additional parameters. And that might be quite cool. So we could do exactly the same thing, right? Like this version here, for example, with the objects. So rather than taking a delta time, and I'm assuming those get strung together properly, but I'm not sure if they do. Because we really want to force furniture to get passed. So I actually don't know this. So if I do a params object args over here, and I just pass the args, will that get properly... Will that work as expected? I'm just not sure how it'll construct this new object here. And I suspect it probably won't work exactly the way we want. But we'll see. So first of all, what kind of compilation errors do we get? Is enterable, not everything. Oh, right. And furniture action doesn't return anything right now. Okay, so we can't do it that way regardless. I mean, it might still be fun to mess with something like this, but I'm not going to do that. So we need a different version, because I call functions with furniture, takes an array, and just runs them, and that's it. It doesn't really return anything, because how do you return something from an array of function calls? Is enterable really almost can't be a list. And I've got to be able to call it directly, and I care about the return value. So on update, like we can hit multiple on update tags. That's one of the things I don't know if we addressed, but one of the things you can do here is you could have more than one on update function. 2, 3, 4. And that it will be fine. But does it ever make sense to have more than one is enterable? Not really. So right away, we could consider getting rid of the idea of an array of is enterable functions. We're just calling one, but we need to know what its return value is. So I guess with that, I'm actually going to get rid of the register update function concept. Not update, the is enterable version. And over here, rather than list of strings, I'm just going to have a string, which is enterable action. So if the string is null or its length is 0, then return yes. Otherwise... So I still don't want to call LUA code directly. I don't want to interact with with moon sharp anywhere other than furniture action. So furniture action needs something like this. It needs some sort of like call function wrapper. And we care about the return value, which I still don't know what it's going to come in as. It will really return a dyn value, which can be a string or a number, this or that. So I'm suspecting what we're going to have to do is typecast from an integer, like from a number, to back to the enum. But we'll figure out what that does later on. So we've got some sort of call function. And we're, no, don't autocomplete. We're going to say call function, and we're going to call it with the isEnterable action. And we're going to pass it our furniture. So pass it ourselves, like this. And we're going to get some sort of dyn value from this. So, in furniture actions, we've got to implement just call function. Call function. I mean, really, it's with furniture. Well, let's make it generic. Call function. And yeah, this will be a good example of params, object, args, like that. I think that's going to be quite good. And so we're not doing a for each or anything like that. We are simply doing this. And we're not keeping the result. We're just going to return it. That's it. Just a little wrapper around the LUA script.call. It's static, it's handy, and it returns a dyn value. So that's great. Now we're still not doing anything with the dyn value. But we're getting there. We've got some sort of return value. So return value dot, so I'm sure it doesn't have an enum. So it has a number, which will be a double. Cast a number? From this. So can you cast from a float directly to an enum? Will that be weird? Well, I guess we'll find out. So if we just do something like, return enterability from there. Any syntax errors? Yeah, I was going to say, that's probably not going to be happy. Oh, for lots of reasons. Right, you're not a new list. You're just a string, which means we don't really have to instantiate you at all, because your default value of null is going to be something we're comfortable with. isEnterable action, if it's not equal to null. Well, actually, really don't care what it is in this example anymore. We're just going to grab the old string. That. That's going to be hunky-dory. And register enterable action, we don't need that anymore. We just set this to be equal to the function name. Like that. And we're happy with that. And oh, yeah, that'll never be null, because now it's a function, so that's okay. So now we say if the furniture is not equal to null, we call their isEnterable and return that. And no overload method for isEnterable takes something. Oh yes, we don't have to pass furniture to it. We just do this. Okay, so we hit play, and we load. And we build a wall over here. Okay. Function is not a function. It has no call meta method. So presumably, where is this happening? This is happening at furniture action 43. Yeah, so it's saying there's no function with that particular name. All right, so I spent the next couple of minutes sort of being a derp here and not realizing that the reason that this function call is failing is because you don't call the function just by passing a string. You actually have to get an instance of the actual variable, and I'd forgotten about that. So this is function name is what gets passed here, and then we have to grab an instance of the actual function based on that name. So we tell the Lua script, hey, you've got some sort of variable with this particular name, which happens to be an object of type function. We grab a reference to that and then call that. And then if I give this a go, this really did take me too long to figure out that I'd made such a basic mistake. But I knew I did. I was like, there's no way this can't work. Does this work? Hey, the door opened! It seemed to close a little faster than expected. Is it just me? I think that's just a minor thing in our actual kind of logic for calculating the door behavior. Or something. That is most likely, I'm betting that's the way it was always working. It's almost like we need to have the door just sort of stay open for a tick before it starts to close again. And that just might be a question of the animation. Let's see. Oh! Right, I forgot. It's because we return. I was commenting this out for some testing. I forgot I'd commented all this stuff out to see what was the problem with enter door and if there's any weirdness with this enter ability. Yeah, so we were returning, basically because we were returning nil, this was effectively telling the character that, yeah, you can walk through instantly. So he's not actually waiting for the door to open. So now let's hit play. And let's see if that code works. Not convinced that the enums will work out of the box, but who knows? Maybe it will. Okay, not quite. Attempting to index a nil value. Now, this is internally to the Moonsharp interpreter, which means we're not getting a lot of really useful information. But almost certainly it's because it's trying to hit enterability.yes, and it doesn't know what enterability is. So Moonsharp expose enum. I wonder, and I didn't actually get any useful information there. But this enterability, where the hell does it get defined? Go to declaration. Can I just do that? Not sure. We'll find out if that helps. Would not surprise me if it didn't. Oh, we know this is actually leading to compiler errors. I'm sure there's a way to expose a custom data type in Moonsharp. I'm sure there's a way. But for the sake of argument now, just to see if we can get this working, let's return just numbers over here. So enterability.yes is the first one. So this would be 0, 1, 2 is these numbers. So this would be 0, and soon would be a value of 2. Actually, let me comment out the old ones. So return value and return a value. So let's see what happens here. And see if it's happy with that. I guess I could define the values inside of Lua. There's got to be a better way to do it. We'll figure this out. First of all, let's see if this works at all. And it does! There we go. Our character is now correctly waiting for the door to open, because what's happening here is we're returning a number, 0 or 2, and then in our furniture, this is enterable, we then cast the returned number to the enterability enum. And an enum is really, you can very, very much think about it as just an integer with a name. So saying something like enterability.yes is just a shortcut to the number 0. We could use hardcode define, we could do all kinds of different things. And maybe what I'd like to do, and I mean, this is kind of a sucky kind of duplication, but we could, inside of Lua, define enterability as an object with .yes, .soon, and whatever coded to 0, 1, 2. I'm going to look up to see if there's a good way to expose these enum values in here, just so that we've got a lot of consistency, because we don't want to get people to have to type in numbers. We want to have them do something. And it could just be a define, right? We could have, at the top, we could just have some sort of value. Whoa. Something like enterability underscore yes, which is equal to 0. And we can use that over here, assuming I haven't done goofed. No soon 1, 2. We get that kind of pretty that way. We could do something like that. And hit play. And load. Basic wall. There you go. I mean, that works, but then what we have to do at this point, which I'm not comfortable with, is maintain the enum here and the defines at the top here, which is a very bad no-no. I'll think of some way to group that up, either by exposing the enum or coming up with a master set of defines that is shared between both, which we could do by just having an object of some kind. I don't know. I'll see. I think that's going to wrap up this this double-sized episode here. Again, mostly re-implementing things we had before, but finding out certain issues, cleaning that up, and what's left now is basically, to bring us back to form, is just implementing a few more on updates, which should be relatively easy to do. And then, well, we're getting very close. I want to actually talk about the future of the project here for a moment. We're getting very close to the point where I really want to get this up on probably something like GitHub. And that's going to require a couple more cleanups. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'll probably change the images rather than having PSDs, you know, the actual Photoshop files. We'll probably just put up like PNG versions of this so that it's a lot smaller, because the repo will grow to a ridiculous size. I mean, anytime you've got binary files like this, like just data files as opposed to text in a Git repo, it grows quite quickly as those things are edited, and so you really want to minimize their size. I would also probably, just like we've moved our XML and our now LUA to the streaming assets folder, I will probably want to do something similar with the images, such that it's more moddable, because again, right now, the only way to change the graphics are to edit the Unity file. And you could have it as a separate sort of Unity asset bundle, but that's still not something that's very easily editable and moddable by the end user. So what I'm going to want to do is have a streaming assets file or folder here with the images, with the PNGs that then get read in at runtime. When you double click on the exe, it loads in the images there and then sets up the sprites. The gotcha will be that we won't be able to use the sort of sprite editor in here for quickly chopping up and defining these sprites. So we're going to have to figure out what that will happen. But it's going to be at that point where we've got the sprites out to the streaming assets folder over here that the final project, the final organization of project will really be there. And I suppose the sounds as well. But there's a few things we have to solve before we get there, because we're going to need to be able to read the images and the sounds at runtime. And that's not as easy or straightforward as some of these other things, because Unity does quite a bit of work on your images over here, kind of ahead of time, kind of chopping them up, setting them up as textures in different kind of formats. And so we'll have to put in a little bit of work to read images at runtime. But I think it's something we have to do. But at that point, that's really when the project is going to be, I think, fully open to being worked on by the community, which has always been my goal with this. I wanted to set up certain basics, then get it up on something like GitHub, and just have other people contributing and working on the project and making it a real community project, while I mostly just like babysit the commits, and maybe even appoint other people to help babysit the commits and make it a real group effort. I mean, I still want to go and be developing the game, because I think it's going to be cool, and I like base building games, but I will be just another contributor among many. So hopefully we're working towards that. A lot of people have asked for a Git repo in the past, and the reason I've hesitated, or up until now, is because I knew the sort of baseline structure of where we're keeping all these binary files is going to change pretty dramatically. And that's one area where we can really sort of explode a Git repo too quickly if with lots of binary files that are large and change frequently. And so hopefully we're going to move to something that's a little bit more comfortable there. And the sort of thing where the graphic packs can be farmed out as basically just mods or something that's changeable. We don't have a format in here to read in a mod specifically yet, but that's actually, we're kind of getting there, because these streaming assets, you can easily assume, right, that the streaming assets can be reorganized here in some sort of like, you know, official folder with data and Lua files and images, right? And then people can drop in, create their own folder. So like I can create later on, I mean, not in Unity because you don't need this, but to have a mod, you just say, hey, go to your Project Porcupine streaming assets folder and just unzip this file into there, which is going to create a folder called Quills Awesome Mod Pack, which has its own images and furniture data and Lua scripts in there. And basically the same way that this is the same way that RimWorld is moddable, for example. It just has a mods folder, and you just drop something in there, and it just adds stuff, or potentially overwrites some stuff, and that's it. And it's really easy to manage. Kerbal Space Program is moddable in basically the same way. Kerbal Space Program, the main folder for it's got, I think it's got a data folder? I think it's called data. I don't remember off the top of my head. Data or assets, one or the other. And in there's the official items, which is in the Squad folder. Squad is the company that publishes Kerbal Space Program, and it's in there that they have all their images, all their parts, all their game logic, and so on and so forth. And then to make a mod, you just make another folder inside that data folder that sits right next to the Squad one that either adds more objects or overwrites the behavior of existing ones, which is really, really, really quite cool. So that's what I'm aiming for. And again, yeah, at that point, we'll be moving things over to GitHub. I mean, before the modding gets put in, certainly. But let me get rid of this. But once the images gets moved over, I want to move everything over to GitHub. And then we'll be changing the format of the Project Porcupine videos and the way Patreon works. But I may just close Patreon at that point because it might get to the point where, well, we're sort of beyond what I can do as useful tutorials, and instead it'll be, hopefully we will be making a game together and make it be the greatest base building game of all time. Because honestly, I'm trying to remember, is there another base building game out there that is open source? There are great dungeon crawlers and roguelikes out there that are open source. I mean, there's lots of great things like this. Like, lots of great open source games. Is there one that's a base building one? I'm trying to remember, and I'm not sure that there is. So we have the opportunity to do something kind of cool here. But that'll be a discussion for another time. We still have lots of work to do before I get to that point. But I am starting to see the end of this phase 1 of Project Porcupine, and it's making me really excited because I can't wait to just open this up on everyone and letting you guys just go to town on this bad boy. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Thank you everyone who pledged on Patreon to support these videos back in May and are therefore keeping this series going from June through to early July. And a special thank to these Mike Check level supporters. We got Speedy Savant, Valiant Cake Fiend, Aaron Toibson, Marius Field Vold, Jan Torrevel, Julien Auger Lafont, Steven Stager, Michael McClintock, Kale the Quick, Drazion, Adjective, Jason Yanity, Wes Oldenboving, Craig Mortel, Neil Blakely, Milner, and absolutely everyone who watched, shared, favorited, and subscribed these videos. Thank you very much for keeping this series going, and I'll see you next time.